when one of the great crashing assaults bursts in and leaves an emptiness where there had been a home, a tumbled ruin of your ordered ways, a heart so sore you wonder how it holds together. When life tumbles in, what then? If you've caught your breath when splashing through the shallow waters of some summer brook, how will you fare when Jordan bursts its banks and rushes far as the eye can see, one huge swirl of angry water, and half choked, you're tossed nearer and nearer to the roaring of the falls and over it. By the way, I didn't announce that children could retire to children's church, so I need to say that. Suppose that to you, as to Job, suddenly there leaped dreadful tidings of disaster. Would you have the grit to pull yourself together and face it as he did? He said, the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Suppose that to you, as to Christ, it became evident that yours was to be a steep and lonely road, that some tremendous sacrifice was to be asked of you. Could you face it with a shadow of the Master's courage and the Master's calm? For there's no supposing in the matter. To a certainty, to you and to me, someday these things must come. Yes, unbelievably they come. For years and years we go on our sunny way and we live our happy lives, and then to us it happens. And when it does, nobody has a right to snivel or whimper as if something unique and inexplicable had befallen him. As Walter Langley titled his famous painting, "Never morning wore to evening, but some heart did break." Hearts just as sensitive as yours and mine. But when your heart breaks, what then? It's a bit late in the day to be talking about insurance when one's house is ablaze from end to end, and somewhat tardy to be searching for something to bring one through when the test is upon you. And how are you and I so easily fretted by minor worries to make shift at all in the swelling of Jordan, with the cold of it catching away our breath and the rush of it plucking at our footing? Goethe tells us that all religions were designed to meet us and give us help just there, to enable us to bear the unbearable, to face the impossible, to see through with some kind of decency and honor what obviously can't be done at all. But when so many people's religion is a fair weather affair, a little rain and it runs and crumbles, a touch of strain and it snaps. So long as God's will runs parallel to ours, we follow blithely. But the moment that they cross or clash, that life grows difficult, our faith often fails us just when we have the most need of it. You remember our Lord's story of the two men who lived in the same village. They went to the same synagogue, sat on the same pew, and listened to the same services. And one day, some kind of gale blew into their lives, a fearsome storm, and in one case, everything collapsed. For that unhappy soul had built on sand, and in his day of need, everything was undermined and vanished. But the other, though he too had to face the emptiness, the loneliness, the pain, he came through it all braver and stronger and mellower and nearer to God, for he had built on the rock. Well, what of you and me? If we've found it a business to march with the infantry, how will we keep up with the horsemen? If the small ills of life have frayed our faith and temper, what will we do in the roar and the black swirl of Jordan? We will listen to Jesus Christ, for he spoke from the darkness round the cross. We may not understand him or agree with him or obey him, but nobody can challenge his right to speak. I know there are Pollyannas who claim that the life of faith means no problems in this world or the next, but I disagree. Surely the acknowledgement of God's love raises new problems. If love, then why, and why, and why? To me, the essence of faith has always seemed to be a certain brave loyalty that can believe in the dark and that still trusts God unshaken, even when the evidence looks fairly damning. Do you think Christ always understood or found it easy? There was a day when he took God's will for him in his hand and he turned it around and he looked at it and he said, "Is this what you ask of me?" And for a moment, his eyes looked almost incredulous. And on another day, when puzzled and uncertain, he cried out, "But is this really what you mean that I should give you? This here? This now?" Yes, and another still, when the cold rushing waters roared in a raging torrent through his soul, yet he would not turn back. He fought his way to the further bank and died, still believing that the God who seemed to have deserted him, in the God who seemed to have deserted him. And that is why he's given a name that's above every name. I do not understand this life of ours, but still less can I comprehend how people in trouble and loss and bereavement can fling away peevishly from the Christian faith. In God's name, fling to what? Have we not lost enough without losing that too? If Christ is right, if, as he says, there are somehow hidden away from our eyes as yet, still there, wisdom and planning and kindness and love in these dark times, then we can see them through. But if Christ was wrong and all that is not so, if God set his foot on my home crudely, blindly, as I might tread on some insect in my path, have I not the right to be angry and sore? If Christ was right, and immortality and the dear hopes of which he speaks do really lie a little way ahead, we can manage to make our way to them. But if it's not so, if it's all over and there is nothing more, how dark the darkness grows. You people in the sunshine may believe the faith, but we in the shadow must believe it. We have nothing else. And it is in the dark that the faith becomes biggest and bravest, and its wonder grows yet more and more. Grace, said Samuel Rutherford, grows best in winter. And already some things have become very clear to me. Now that life has tumbled in, three things. This to begin, that the faith works. It fulfills itself. It is real. And that its most audacious promises are true. Always we must try to remember that the glorious assertions of the Bible are not guesses. There is no perhaps about them. These splendid truths are flowers that human hands, like yours, picked in the gardens of their actual experience. Why is the prophet so sure that as one whom his mother comforts, so will God comfort hurt things? How did the psalmist know that those who are broken in their hearts and grieved in their minds, God heals? Because, of course, it had happened to them. They had themselves in their dark days felt his tenderness and the touch of wonderfully gentle hands. And it is true. When we're cast into some fiery furnace, we're not alone, never alone. But there is one beside us like unto the Son of God. When our feet slip on the slimy stones of the swelling of Jordan, a hand leaps out and catches us and steadies us. I will not leave you comfortless, said Christ, nor does he. There is a presence with us, a comforter, a fortifier, who does strengthen, does uphold, does bring us through somehow from hour to hour and day to day. A second thing I've learned as the days go by, what grows upon one more and more is the amazing tenderness of God. Like as a father pitieth his children, mused a psalmist long ago. I have been wondering these days whether he too had suddenly, without 1 second's warning, to tell his children that their mother was dead, and that remembrance of that agony made him sure all his days. It is not willingly that God afflicts and grieves us children of men. The presence, the sufficiency, the sympathy of God, these things grow very real and very sure and very wonderful. Third, one becomes certain about immortality. You think you believe in heaven, but wait till you lower your dearest into an open grave, and you will know what believing it means. I have always gazed up at Paul in staggered admiration when he burst out at the grave's mouth into his scornful challenge. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? But now it does not seem to me such a tremendous feat, for I have felt the very same. True, I can tell him where death's sting lies. It is in the constant missing of what used to always be there. The bitter grudging every second of the dead body to the senseless earth. The terrible insecurity for one is never safe. Anything, nothing, and the old overwhelming pain comes rushing back. Yet when the other day I took up a magazine, it was with amazement that I discovered they were still chattering about whether we people are immortal or not. I'm past that. I know. As the creed says, I believe in the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sin, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. But there is one thing I should like to say which I've never dared to say before, not feeling that I had the right. We Christian people in the Mass are entirely un-Christian in our thoughts of death. We have our eyes wrongly focused. We're selfish and self-centered and self-absorbed. We keep thinking aggrievedly of what it means to us, and that is wrong, all wrong. In the New Testament, you hear very little of the families with that aching gap, huddled together in their desolate little home in some back street. But you read a great deal about the saints in glory, and the sunshine, and the singing, and the splendor yonder. And surely that is where our thoughts should dwell. Think out your brooding. What exactly does it mean? Would you pluck the crowns from their heads again? Would you snatch the palms of victory out of their hands? Dare you to compare the clumsy nothings here with what they must have yonder where Christ himself has met them? As the old poet put it centuries ago, our sweet is mixed with bitter gall. Our pleasure is but pain. Our joys scarce last the looking on. Our sorrows still remain. But there they have such rare delights, such pleasure and such play. that unto them 1,000 years doth seem but yesterday. A little about their perspective in eternity. To us it will be long and lonesome, but they won't even have looked around them before we burst in. In any case, are we to let our dearest be wrenched out of our hands by force? Or, seeing that it has to be, will we give them willingly and proudly, looking God in the eyes and telling Him that we prefer our loneliness rather than that they should miss one tittle of their rights? When the blow fell, the only thought that kept beating like a hammer in my brain, I felt I'd lost her forever, must have lost her. That to all eternity she must shine far ahead of me. And my heart kept crying out, I choose it, I choose it. Do not for my sake deny her anything. I know now that I have not lost her. For love is not a passing thing one leaves behind. Now while we remain behind, we must turn back to life again. Like a healthy-minded laddie at some boarding school who after the first hour of homesickness resolves, if he's wise, that he will not mope, but throw himself into the life about him and do his part and play the game and enjoy every minute of it. Though always his eyes look ahead for the term's end, and always his heart thrills and quickens at the thought of that wonderful day when he will have not memories and letters only, but the whole of his dear ones really there. When he will be with them again and they will be with him. Well, that will come in time. Meanwhile, I don't think you need to be afraid of life. Our hearts are very frail. There are places where the road is very steep and very lonely. But we have a wonderful God. And as Paul puts it, what can separate us from His love? And as death, he says immediately, pushing off that aside as the most obvious of all impossibilities. No, not death. For standing in the roaring of the Jordan, cold to the heart with its dreadful chill, and very conscious of the terror of its rushing, I too, as hopeful in Pilgrim's Progress, can call back to you who one day in your turn will have to cross it. Be of good cheer, my brother, for I feel the bottom, and it is sound. I want that sermon. I'm so grateful to have Amy here leading our music today, and the songs, as God does so often, have been so excellent. And what could be better than Because He Lives to close our service?
If you can turn to number 407 in your hymnals.